The First War. The Dark Portal opened, and orcs stormed Azeroth, burning everything in their path. Their warlocks, orcs trained by Gul'dan and the powers given to him by the Burning Legion, were one of the orcish horde's greatest and darkest assets. They wielded magics of Fel and Shadow, devastating the defending armies of Stormwind. The Second War. The orcish horde, successful in their conquest of the kingdom of Stormwind, turned their attention to the fleeing refugees and the human kingdoms to the north. They fought a ferocious battle, but ultimately failed against the combined forces of the Lordaeron Alliance. In the end, Gul'dan betrayed the horde, taking those clans loyal to him away from the battle to the Broken Isles in search of the tomb of Sargeras. The armies assaulting the walls of Lordaeron were routed. The Alliance gave chase right to the base of the orcish horde, the Black Rock Spire. Here, on the slopes of Black Rock Mountain, the horde made their final stand. During the battle, a paladin, Alexandros Mograine, noticed a warlock using a dark orb to cast magics. When the warlock fell, Mograine approached the orb. The living embodiment of shadow, he called it. He took it and kept it secret, hoping that someday the orb could be changed. Years passed. The orcs were locked away in internment camps, and peace settled over the northern kingdoms. And then another threat emerged, the undead scourge. Mograine saw an opportunity to use the orb. He revealed it to the other paladin leaders of the Silver Hand. Here was a crystal so concentrated with darkness, there must be another, an antithesis, one made of holy light. The other paladins were appalled at the sight of the crystal and blasted it with light in an attempt to destroy it. Instead, the crystal absorbed the spells and transformed, and there in front of Mograine was the crystal he had envisioned. Mograine traveled to Ironforge, accompanied by his advisor, Fairbanks. The two of them entreated King Magni Bronzebeard to take the crystal and forge it into a mighty weapon. The Dwarf King did just that, and there in the depths of Ironforge, the Ashbringer was made, a weapon with no equal, forged with the sole purpose of destroying the Scourge. Mograine took up the mighty weapon. With it, he would eradicate countless undead with ease, leaving only ashes in its wake. He became the Ashbringer, Scourge of the Scourge. Now the High Lord of the Silver Hand, he became humanity's greatest weapon against the Scourge onslaught. The Third War eventually came to an end with Archimonde and the Legion's defeat on the summit of Mount Hyjal, but amongst the Plaguelands that was once Lordaeron, the war against the undead continued on. 3 Dreadlords led the Scourge against the remaining humans, Deatharok, Vermathras, and Balnazar. The latter saw an opportunity. He killed Saidan Dathrahan, a leader amongst the remaining human resistance, and took his guise. Now masquerading as a leader of the enemy, he set his sights on his only remaining threat, the Ashbringer. He manipulated Renault Mograine, Alexandros Mograine's son, promising him untold power if he helped kill his own father. Under Saidan's orders, Renault led both the Ashbringer and his advisor, Fairbanks, into Stratholme, a city now infested with the undead. The undead struck in an endless tide of rotting flesh and tearing claws, and Mograine, with the Ashbringer in hand, tore through them by the thousands. The undead came and came and came, until finally Mograine dropped his weapon. Renault struck then, swiping the weapon up and driving it through his father. Alexandros Mograine fell there, in the streets of Stratholme, amidst the tide of undead, and his blade of pure holy light became corrupt, unable to survive such a heinous act. Fairbanks returned to Hearthglen, the center of the human resistance. He told those there of the betrayal of Renault. Those who believed him left Hearthglen to create the Argent Dawn, but those who denied his claims killed him for his blasphemy and joined Renault to form the Scarlet Crusade. The two factions would spend the next few decades fighting both the undead hordes as well as each other. As for Alexandros and the Ashbringer, they were taken by Kel'Thuzad. Mograine was raised as a Death Knight, and his Ashbringer, a twisted version of its former self, was returned to him. He was eventually confronted by his younger son, Darion Mograine, deep in the halls of Naxxramas. He pleaded with his father, but was eventually forced to kill him, putting Alexandros' spirit to rest. Darion took the corrupted Ashbringer and left. Darion took the Ashbringer into the Scarlet Monastery. He confronted Renault, and when Renault attacked, Alexandros' spirit rose from the blade to defend Darion. Renault begged for his father's forgiveness. Alexandros forgave his son, but only after using the Ashbringer to decapitate the treacherous man. From there, Darien joined the Argent Dawn in a stand against the Scourge at Light's Hope Chapel. In an attempt to free his father's trapped soul, Darien turned the Ashbringer on himself, driving the blade through his body. For his efforts, he was raised as a Death Knight under the Lich King's command, just as his father. He continued to wield the corrupted Ashbringer. The Lich King used him to train new Death Knights, and eventually sent Darien and his forces in a second assault against Light's Hope Chapel. The assault ultimately failed, and during the battle, the corrupted Ashbringer began to turn against Darien. When the Death Knights were forced to surrender, the Paladin Tyrion Fordring revealed to Darien that the Lich King had knowingly sent them into a trap. Darien's father appeared to him then, and upon seeing his father, the last of the Lich King's hold broke on Darien. The two embraced, and Darien pledged himself to fight against the undead. The Lich King appeared, stole Alexandros' soul, and continued the strike on Light's Hope Chapel. Darien threw the Ashbringer to Tyrion, who took it up. In the hands of Tyrion, the Ashbringer was restored to its former magnificence. Tyrion used the Ashbringer to drive the Lich King off, securing a victory for the Argent Dawn. Tyrion joined the Argent Dawn and the remnants of the Silver Hand into the Argent Crusade. The Death Knights that had once served the Lich King banded together under Darien's command, forming the Knights of the Ebon Blade, and together the two factions led the rest of Azeroth's forces in a sprawling campaign to Northrend to face the might of the Lich King. Tyrion led the assault on Icecrown, establishing the Argent Dawn and joining with the Knights of the Ebon Blade to form the Ashen Verdict. Eventually, he confronted the Lich King himself at the frozen throne atop Icecrown Citadel. There, he used the Ashbringer to slay the Lich King, and finally put an end to the threat of the Scourge. Tyrion and the Ashbringer returned to Hearthglen and began to rebuild and restore the Plaguelands. Years later, they were called to battle once more. The full might of the Legion had appeared on the Broken Shore. Tyrion and his Argent Crusade were the first defenders on the scene, and the Legion overwhelmed them. Tyrion was taken captive and used to draw in the forces assaulting the Legion's foothold. Before the armies of the Alliance and the Horde, Tyrion was dropped into a pool of lava and seemingly killed. Only later was it discovered that Tyrion was still alive. The newly restored Order of the Silver Hand, comprised of paladins all over the world, led an assault on the Broken Shore. They found Tyrion and the Ashbringer, the former near death. Tyrion passed the title of the Ashbringer onto a new paladin before he passed. With the Ashbringer in hand, the new paladin set forth to defend Azeroth from the invading masses of the Burning Legion. The Ashbringer is easily one of the most recognized weapons across all Azeroth, and played a major role in the downfall of the Lich King and his undead scourge. Any who face the Ashbringer should be prepared to face the full might of the Holy Light.